The small town of Zikron Yaakov is today a favorite for Israeli holidaymakers from nearby Haifa or Tel Aviv. But its quaint atmosphere belies its historical significance, for it's among Palestine's earliest Jewish settlements and one of the seeds from which the modern state of Israel was to be sown. The community was established in 1882 by a group of Eastern European Jews known as the Lovers of Zion. Zion being a biblical name for Jerusalem, a city holy to Christianity, Islam and Judaism. The Jews had been a predominantly diaspora people for 2 millennia, scattered across Europe, the Middle East and beyond. Yet, from the late 19th century on, small numbers began to immigrate to Palestine, a land they believed was promised to them by God.
For me, it wasn't in another land. For me, it was my land, not only in the mind, but in the heart and the soul. You have a country, he have a country, she have a country. Why not I?
In the 1880s, waves of anti-Semitic riots or pogroms in the Russian Empire persuaded many Jews that they must take their destiny into their own hands. In the years up to the First World War, some 3.5 million Jews emigrated from Russia and Eastern Europe, some fleeing persecution, most simply seeking a better life. The overwhelming majority selected the United States or Western Europe as their destination. But a tiny minority chose an altogether different land, Palestine. Then, not a distinct country, but a province of the vast Ottoman Empire. Tamar Eshel's grandparents were among this first group of Jewish newcomers.
My great-parents came from Russia in the summer of 1882. They were adamant to come to this country and to create a modern Jewish society.
A small community of Jews, numbering around 25,000, were already present in Palestine at this time. For centuries, they had lived alongside the majority Arab population peacefully, under the religiously tolerant Ottoman regime. But the sophisticated European newcomers, soon to be known as Zionists, had little in common with the indigenous people of Palestine, not least their fellow Jews.
The difference of the group with the Jews who were in Palestine in those days was tremendous. Usually the people who lived here were Orthodox, were interested in studying the Torah, the holy books, and many of them just came to die here, not necessarily to live.
The Zionists regarded the Orthodox and the religious as fatalists, as passive, as doing God's will, but not trying to improve their lot. Whereas Zionism wanted to improve the lot of the Jews by removing them from the lands of their oppression and reconstructing the Jew as well as a Jewish society.
It was agriculture and not biblical study that interested the new settlers. Wishing to be self-sufficient and believing in the moral value of manual labor, most chose not the holy city of Jerusalem, but the hills and valleys of Palestine as their dwelling. Schools such as this near Tel Aviv were established to train those who'd previously been urban dwellers to farm successfully in a land with an unfamiliar climate and terrain.
They wanted to be farmers. They didn't know much about farming, I must say, and some of the things they did not succeed.
Whilst this small number of Jewish immigrants busied themselves with agricultural experimentation, back in Europe, others had ambitions for the Jewish people that extended far beyond mere farming. Hungarian-born Theodor Herzl is the founder of political Zionism. This museum in Jerusalem is a testament to the importance he holds for the state of Israel. From his desk in Vienna, Herzl came to the conclusion that Jews would always suffer anti-Semitism so long as they remained a diaspora people, that is to say, minorities in states ruled by others. The solution he put forward in 1896 in a radical book entitled The Jewish State was for the Jews to have their own territory, a territory in which they would no longer be the minority and could run their own affairs. That same year, Herzl sought to make his idea reality, seeking land for a Jewish entity. His first stop was Istanbul.
At the beginning, Herzl tried to get some kind of charter from the Ottoman Empire, which was the sovereign in Palestine at that time. He did not demand independence. He just demanded the right of settlement and some kind of autonomy. The Ottomans did not like the idea.
Herzl was willing to consider a number of destinations for a Jewish entity, but the delegates he assembled at the first Zionist conference held in Basel in 1897 thought that Palestine was the most appropriate location.
What triggered the Zionist upsurge was the surge in anti-Semitic attacks, legislation, pogroms, and so on. But I think also among Jews for the previous 2,000 years, before the 1880s, there had been a sort of a religious longing to return, a religious historical longing to return to the land of the origins of Judaism and to re-establish some form of self-determination.
When Herzl died in 1904, his bold plan was unfulfilled. But a decade after Herzl's death, a momentous war was to change the balance of power in the Middle East forever. On December the 9th, 1917, the Turks surrendered Jerusalem to the British. 2 days later, British General Edmund Allenby and his troops entered the city in triumph. But the victory did not come as a surprise to London. A few weeks earlier, and in one of the most infamous documents in the history of diplomacy, British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour had written to the leader of British Jews, Lord Rothschild. His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object.
The interesting thing about it is not that it was given, but the fact that the British implemented it. You know, at that time, the British undertook 3 promises. Arabia to the Arabs, Judea to the Jews, and Armenia to the Armenians. Of the 3 promises, only one was realized. And the question is why?
One answer is that many in the British establishment had sympathy for the Zionist vision, because it chimed with their own religious sensibilities.
It goes without saying that the vision of the Jewish return to Palestine was part of the Protestant ethics. And it was not as if something new was presented to them.
There are also, and there probably were also, reasons, imperial reasons, for the support of the British government for Zionist colonization. For instance, guarding the Suez Canal from the east against possible aggressors. I think they were also aware of, or at least they believed, that the Jews had considerable power in New York, Washington, economic and translated into political power. So they hoped to garner some political gains from supporting Zionism.
After the First World War, the victorious Allies set about dividing the Ottoman Empire among themselves, establishing new states in what had been provinces without fixed borders. France was to administer Lebanon and Syria. Iraq, Transjordan and Palestine would be governed by the British. The consequences would be profound, opening a new chapter not only for the world's Jews, but for all the people of the Middle East.